Hello, and welcome to today's presentation. Thanks very much for joining us, and looking forward to sharing with you some of the updates from the last week. Primarily, what we'll be discussing today is the newest announcement, announced yesterday, the Bounce Back Loan Scheme, which hopefully is going to provide smaller amounts of funding to a larger number of businesses on a loaned basis. We'll also be having a look at the grants that are in place, seeing whether we think they've been effective, see whether the money's been easy to get hold of. We'll cover off the business impact of some of the recent developments as well. How are we doing as businesses? It would be great to get your feedback on that. So if you have any, please do let us know. And there's just a slide at the end about commercial rent as well, and what happens if you're in a position where you're unable to pay it. And then, as ever, we'll answer your questions too. So if you have questions, please fire them at us whenever you'd like to. We will answer them as we go using the Q&A section in this Teams meeting, but also then I'll run through them at the end for anyone who hasn't read them, just to share the information. Before starting, I'd like to just go through a couple of the basic kind of guidelines of what we're doing, and just remind you that this is a presentation that will be made publicly available. So if you'd like to protect your identity, please post anonymously, or just use your first name. We'll certainly try and use first names only, but if, yeah, to protect your identity, go with that. Also, this is general guidance rather than specific advice. So if you'd like advice that relates to your business or your particular circumstance, please get in touch with us and we can talk you through it. This should give you a pointer and help you decide whether the scheme sounds like it's something you'd like to look at or not, though. So let's start with business impact and discussing. Let me see. I'm doing the. Kate. Oh, sorry. We've got Kate doing the slides. Thanks very much, Kate, for pushing the slides on, and then me deciding what you can see on your screen or not. We've got Diana in the background who will be answering your questions as we go. So thanks as ever to the team. And if you have a specific question, then they'll be able to get back to you on those. Let's look at business impact. So business impact, firstly, furlough. The furlough scheme has been open now for a week for us to make grant applications and for the money to come back. Pleased to say money started coming back already. 3.8 million people, this is at Thursday, 3.8 million people have been furloughed. It's cost 4.5 billion. I'm not sure whether that is for the claims that have already been put in or whether they're extrapolating that for the entire period to the end of June. I think that it probably relates to the period that has already been claimed for, because that works out at about 1.1, I think I worked out, 1.1 thousand pound per person on the scheme on average. 1 in 4 firms are thought to have stopped trading, or at least they've furloughed people. Not entirely sure how they've come up with that number, but it's a lot of businesses that are unable to work or have stopped working, bound to have a big impact on the economy and our ability to trade. It's impacting lead times, it's impacting the ability to get stock moved around the country. So in that sense, it's having an immense impact. I wonder whether 4.5 billion is what they were expecting it to cost them in the first month or not, whether that will have an impact on how quickly they want us to be getting back to work. Surely it feels like we're in a period now where the media is pressing the government to get us out of lockdown quickly. I'm not sure what you're finding, but certainly, so I live near enough to a main road that I can hear traffic when I'm sat in my kitchen working, and it's getting noisier every day. There's more traffic on the road. There's more people out there realizing that they can get out there and that it is acceptable, or maybe they're chancing their luck. But it feels like people are pushing back to normal. What will happen when it does, though? Let's have a look at the next slide as well, please, Kate. Okay, so normal. Are we getting used to the new normal? New normal is a phrase that I think I've mentioned in previous presentations that I've heard mentioned by a couple of my suppliers. Is this the new normal? Will the new normal involve more web presentations? Will it involve more distance between people? Will existing offices be suitable? Will people look for a space that has different needs? Yes to all of the above, surely. Does the space that you have left suit the business that you are going back to? We may enter a period of phased release where certain services are available and we can start to get out for certain things, but not for others. So we may find that people are able to go out, but not to every business. Also, once, for example, people are able to go back to hospitality businesses, will they choose to, or will they want more distance between people? I had a laugh with someone yesterday working out how someone like EasyJet will keep going. Will they need to give you 2 meters of leg room in between each row in order to allow you onto the plane? Surely not, but at the same time, what's it going to look like after this? Yeah, okay, like EasyJet aren't one of my clients, but we have clients who use air travel to get around, to get to meetings. Are they going to be able to? What will the cost be like if these airliners can't carry as many people? Is this going to increase the cost of holidays? Is that going to change where people choose to travel and how popular local tourism might be? Who knows? But I feel like now's the time to start planning, because we know that gradual release is almost certain to happen, and it's almost certain to start next month. It feels like I believe that sometime in May we'll start to see this kind of creep back to the old normal. So now's the time to prepare for that, right? So here's a suggestion to you. If you find yourself with nothing to do in between trying to keep a business running and running a household or whatever it is that you do alongside the business, why don't you just sketch down a SWOT analysis? I'm not sure if you know SWOT analysis, but I put a little detail on this next slide. And SWOT analysis is looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of your that face your business. Strengths and weaknesses, that's what you do well and what you could do better. And it's all about what you're doing internally. How does your business run? How could it be more effective at doing what it's designed to do, what it's out there to do? How can you improve from the inside? The second part is looking at the opportunities and threats. And it's easy to identify threats at the moment, but it's also very true that there are opportunities available as well. These are coming from the outside in, and that's important. We're looking at external factors that we have little control over, and yet we need to work in an environment that includes them. Well, there's definite threats, but as I say, there are definite opportunities to be found as well. If we can be the first businesses to recognise that the world will not look as it looked before, and adapt our businesses to still provide those services or goods that are core to why we've set ourselves up and started trading, then we can offer something that others may take longer to realise is an option. We can be early to the market with a better service and hopefully keep or maybe even expand our customer base because of that. Certainly something that we're looking at, and I'd absolutely recommend you do as well. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. It can be so simple, or it can be a day, an away day for your whole team. It's definitely one to get the team involved with if you have one, because they'll come up with ideas that you just won't, because they'll see things from a different perspective. Certainly we did this a year ago, and I think my name appeared on almost every weakness post-it note that went up on a whiteboard that we were working with. And it was great to hear that feedback, because it helped us to adapt and to improve the business. It's very hard to look at yourself sometimes and say, what could I be doing better? Maybe it's easier for others to see it objectively, although I still don't believe they were right on 100% of the points that they put on there. So that's what I think we need to be thinking about, is not this phase, but the next one. What will business look like when we come out of lockdown? What do we want our business to look like? It's a brilliant opportunity to plan for change, and potentially, as we'll find out, find some financing to help us bounce back as well, which is great. So let's look at the slides again, and let's get into our update on grants. Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme. So applications could be made from Monday of last week. So the scheme has been open for 7 days. The government, when you submit the claim, say that they will get payment to you within 10 days. They've now updated that to say that they will get payment to you within 6 working days. They have then made payment to some of our clients on Saturday, which is not a working day and was 5 days afterwards. So these are their This is their promise that they will attempt to make payment to you within 10, but it seems that they are making payment as promptly as they can. They're not holding on to the money for the whole 10 days, which is fantastic, because I do know that there are some clients who've been concerned that they won't receive money until it's too late. It looks as if the government are pushing as much as possible to get this money to the right people as quickly as possible. So yeah, it will appear on your bank statement as HMRC JRS grant. So look out for that. If you see that on your bank statement, that's what it is. For the clients where we're bookkeeping or preparing management accounts, we'll be recording this as other income on the profit and loss, so that it's nice and clearly separate from wages, but also separate from turnover. We don't want it to be seen as turnover. For example, I look at my business rates grant that came in April. Well, I look at my profit and loss and think, fantastic, we're 10 grand up, and then I think, oh wait, hang on, that's not actual turnover, that's other income. So keep it separate so that you're not fooling yourselves into thinking that that's reoccurring income. It's a one-off as far as we know at the moment. Okay, so next up we're talking about our findings. The claim process is straightforward. The web form is easy to fill in. It's asking questions that aren't too tricky. Turns out that some of our clients didn't know their UTR for corporation tax, so we've had to help a few of them find that. Absolutely fine. It just shows the benefit of keeping good records just in case something like this happens. And so wherever possible, yeah, keep copies of these letters or keep these important details so that if something does go wrong, they're easily to hand. But I shouldn't be teaching you to suck eggs. It's entirely up to you whether you keep your records in good order or not. No evidence needed on these claims, so they're not asking to see proof that you have furloughed people. They're just asking for the amount as a total that you have paid people in furlough that you are able to reclaim under the job retention scheme. I believe that this will be followed up with compliance checks in the future, but the form is straightforward and quick to get through. Just as well, really, because you've got 15 minutes before the form times out and you have to start all over again from the beginning, which is a bit of a frustration because the form has absolutely no memory of details previously entered. What that means is that if you are going to have to make another claim in a month's time, then it will not remember any of the national insurance numbers or names that you've put in. Certainly at the moment it doesn't, although maybe they'll improve that by the end of next month. They've done wonders in the last 30 days, maybe they'll do even more in the next. I certainly hope so, because some of the announcements that have been made as this month have gone on have not yet been reflected in the online application form. So some of the more complex cases, for example, if there has been a 2p transfer after the 19th of March, there is no ability at the moment to apply for that job retention scheme grant through the online portal. So for a small number of cases, where there is a high amount of uncertainty about whether the claim would be possible or not over the last month, we're told yes, it is possible, but then we're given a web form where it's not possible. So we've got a couple of cases with HMRC that they're going to come back to us on, and as soon as I have more information about some of those more tricky cases, I'll be passing that on to the people who need to know. If it's interesting to you, let me know and we can talk to you about that. Let me get back to that nice slide plus my face, just in case you're missing it. Right, let's look at the next slide and my face. Remind us about the job retention scheme. Okay, so you may still receive the job retention scheme if your employee volunteers or works for someone else as well. So yes, you can still get money back. Do recall from previous presentations that your employment contract with that individual may prohibit other work. So just consider whether you want them to be working for someone else or not, because it seems that this is in your gift to allow. Employees continue to accrue holiday throughout furlough, and you can claim now or wait until the end. So some people are choosing to make claims as they go to get the money back because they've already paid it to their employees. You can even claim 14 days before payday. So if we're going, well, you can work out what a month minus 14 is. About 2 weeks into the month, you can start to make your claims for the month-end payroll, which allows a very, very small window considering the 10 days, but it does allow a small window for us to make claims and get the money back by month end, which is positive overall, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, other grants. No big updates on the rates-related grants. There are a few cases that we've had where people had to put an inquiry into the revenues team to see whether we could get this or that sorted before a grant payment could be made. And substantially all of those claims have now been made, and money is coming into those final few businesses that had not yet made their claim successfully. Self-employed grant there, just a reminder that again there's nothing new. I believe they've been working up to this bounce back loan announcement and therefore have not been making announcements about the self-employed grant. No need to do anything, HMRC will contact you. And have you got an HMRC account already? If you don't have an HMRC account, you might want to consider getting that set up. If you're a client with us and you want to make the claim, and we do need to fill in an online form, which we suspect we will need to, we'll discuss that with you once we have more guidance from HMRC. But at the same time, if you might want to apply for this yourself, or if you just want to keep an eye on your taxes online, get your HMRC account codes dusted off and just see whether you can get online. Have a little look around, make sure you're happy with everything you're seeing. For example, addresses. Have you moved and not told HMRC? They might be worth just checking that all of the records on there are as you expect them to be. Okay. Bounce back loans. So this was announced yesterday afternoon, just as I had made the decision that we didn't really need to hold a presentation today because there wasn't that much to share with you. I was going to quickly ask you for whether you have any questions, and that would be it. Our government announces a new scheme, the Bounce Back Loan Scheme. So before we talk about that, it's running alongside the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, which is 80% government backed with loans up to 5 million. So it's quite a high upper threshold, but the 80% backing means that banks are still looking for security from businesses because they have to cover at least 20%. The owners are being asked to cover at least 20% of the security. So I think that it's been quite restrictive as the banks have been nervous about lending. Indeed, it seems that over 300,000 applications have been made and approximately 17,000 have been successful and only 9,000 have received their money so far. These are reports that I've seen in the press. I haven't gone on to substantiate them, and they are from last week, and with everything moving as quickly as it does, that will be out of date before we know it. However, it seems, and this is certainly my experience from clients, that there's been a lot of reluctance from banks to let people in through the first gateway to even make an application to the scheme. And then once they're into this application scheme, they're being asked for business models, they're being asked for forecasts, and quite a lot of onerous work for a business that doesn't have much money or is struggling to find the time to keep going. So the money hasn't been very easy to access. Hence this new scheme, which is designed to help smaller businesses, micro businesses, they've said, with a smaller amount of lending. The bounce back loan is to provide you with a loan of between £2,000 and £50,000. The loan, skip on a slide if you would, Kate. The loan will be capped at 25% of your turnover. So, for example, if your turnover is 100,000, the most you could borrow would be 25,000. So for that particular business, it would be 2,000 to 25 is available for you to borrow. If your turnover is 200,000 or above, then the maximum you could borrow would be £50,000. So that's the amount. The loan will be interest free for the first year, charges free, and repayment free for the first year. The loan term can be anything, I understand, between 1 year and 6 years. However, I might be wrong about that 1 year part. I'm sure if you wanted to repay it early, there'd be an option too. And apparently a low rate of interest has been agreed between HMRC, or sorry, between the government and the financing bodies, so that it's a standard rate of interest. I think removing the bank's ability for discretion when it comes to charging a higher interest rate, which is positive. So I think this sounds like a good scheme on the face of it. It's 100% government backed rather than 80%, so hopefully this will make banks a lot more inclined or more likely to lend to you. So I think that's positive as well. So what are the conditions? Can I apply? Am I eligible for this? You have to be a business, not a company, not self-employed, just a business. So you can be a company or you can be self-employed, whereas other schemes have only been open to, say, self-employed only, but not companies. This is open to any business in the UK. You have to have been negatively affected by coronavirus, which I think is going to be the case for a lot of businesses who are applying for loans, and was not an undertaking in difficulty on the 31st of December 2019. We'll come back to the term undertaking in difficulty because that's an interesting one. On the government guidance, it is in the speech bubbles, implying that it's a quote. So we're going to try and work out what it's a quote from. You access the loan via a network of lenders, so your current bank is likely to be on that list. And you can also visit, you can visit a website that I haven't put in the slide, sorry for that, but I think it's the British Business Bank. You can visit their website and it lists all of the different banks that are available. If you're not sure where to go, start with businesssupport.gov.uk, which is the government website signposting you to all the schemes that are available. We've been told that this will be available from 9 AM on the 4th of May. So, feel like I might be eligible, but what does this term undertaking in difficulty mean? Let's have a little look at that. It's a term that's described in I'm going to read this. It's a term that's described in the European Commission guidelines on state aid for rescuing and restructuring non-financial undertakings in difficulty. For the purpose of these guidelines, this is now a quote from that document, for the purpose of these guidelines, an undertaking is considered to be in difficulty when, without intervention by the state, it will almost certainly be condemned to going out of business in the short or medium term. Now, this document, the European Commission's guidelines on state aid for rescuing undertakings in difficulty, is designed at looking at how state can support businesses in this position. So it then goes on to list different reasons why a business might be an undertaking in difficulty, and there's a lot of wriggle room would be the wrong word. The guidance is quite clear on what they consider to be a reason you might be undertaking in difficulty, but there's quite a few different reasons to allow lots of businesses that are struggling to fall into this category. Whereas now we have a situation where our government is using undertaking in difficulty to describe people who are not eligible. So we've read this and we've looked at how they define undertaking in difficulty, but take it with a pinch of salt, because until the government provides more definition on what they mean by undertaking in difficulty, we really don't know for certain. I expect this to come over the course of the next week, and as soon as we know what that term means and how they intend to consider you to be in difficulty or not, we'll tweet about it so the information is with you as quickly as we can get it to you. We kept looking at this, and the next slide goes into a bit more detail on it. So this communication, so we're still talking about this same document, and it goes on to say rescue aid, as well as in the case of SMEs and smaller state-owned undertakings, support may also be granted to undertakings that are not in difficulty within the meaning of point 20, but that are facing acute liquidity needs due to exceptional and unforeseen circumstance, like this maybe. So it seems that the government is allowed to support us, but we're not quite sure what the conditions will be. As I read that slide, it doesn't really add much to this presentation, so let's skip to the next one. Blimey. It's going to be a struggle to read, so I'm going to summarize that rather than read it out to you, which is probably a good thing for all of us. There is a paragraph in there that says you are in financial difficulty if your balance sheet is showing negative net assets. So if your cumulative profits are less than your losses, So overall, you have lost money because of this business venture. That's an approximation of the wording because it has reference to share capital, but with a lot of the businesses that we deal with, share capital is minuscule, and because share capital is minuscule, using that kind of difference between a positive balance sheet and negative balance sheet is probably the right way of looking at it. I hope this isn't how they determine whether you're in difficulty or not, because you could have had a very bad year 3 years ago and have been gradually climbing out, but have very positive feelings about the future. You're not in danger of running out of cash in the short or medium term, except for because of coronavirus. If you had a negative balance sheet, that would seem like a rather unfair way of excluding people from this scheme, although I can see why the government is looking to reduce its risk. It then leads to a couple of further questions, which I've put onto the next slide, I think. Who can apply? Undertaking in difficulty would imply you need positive reserves, i.e. more profits than losses. How will you demonstrate this? Will you have to look at the previous year's accounts, or since they've set out 31st of December, are we going to need management accounts to 31st of December? Are we just going to look at bank balance and make some kind of determination? Well, I hope not. That wouldn't seem right at all. It's got to be simple, because this scheme is designed to be simple to access, where we don't have to provide pages of information in order to access the funding. And yet, how do you prove that you are not an undertaking in difficulty without providing finances? We wait and see. We'll find out over the course of this week. So then, skip along, Kate. Thank you very much. Let's look at some of the other things that are being reported about this scheme. Remember, this came out mid-afternoon yesterday on Monday, the 27th of April, and so we're now midday 28th. The detail is probably less than any other new scheme that's been announced by the government. So hopefully it will be followed up over this week with more. It has been preceded by press releases, which I believe is unusual, or sorry, information provided to the press and to the banks, which I believe is unusual in comparison to the other schemes. Certainly bank websites that we've been visiting over the last couple of weeks have said, hold fire till the 4th, something's coming. So we knew something was in the background, but not quite what it was. So it looks like a lot of preparation has gone into this, and indeed keeping the media informed might be part of it, because the media seems to know information that's not in the guidance. Some sources are saying that the loan will be capped to businesses with a turnover under 200,000. I don't believe that's the case. I believe that's a misinterpretation of the guidance. The guidance says 25% of turnover is the cap. So 50,000. If 50,000 is 25%, then 200,000 would be 100%. But it doesn't. It does not say that if you have a turnover of 201,000, you cannot apply. It simply says that you're capped at 50,000. So I think they would have been a bit more explicit about that if that were the case. Certainly in the past, they've been very explicit when they're excluding people from schemes. Cash will be paid out within 24 hours of a decision being made. That's fantastic news. What they don't tell you is how long it will take to make a decision. So watch and wait, I think, on that one to see whether a target comes out for that. We do know that the form should be simple, quick and standard, so the banks don't have too much of an opportunity to interfere with the decision-making process. They are allowed to ask a list of simple, standard questions that everyone is asked and make their decisions off the back of that. I've also seen reports that you must have been trading at 1st of March 2020 in order to apply. How you can have been trading, say if you started trading on the 28th of February 2020, how you can have also been not in financial difficulty at 31st of December. Well, I suppose if you didn't exist, you couldn't be in financial difficulty. So maybe they do work that way. 1st of March looks like the date that you need to have had a business plan. Limited look forward testing, so forward-looking testing, which is another way of saying they're not going to be asking for lots of business plans and cash flow forecasts. They're going to be making decisions based on, I believe, the current situation and your previous trade. There is no mention of early repayment fees, but I have spoken to people in the past who are concerned about the coronavirus business interruption scheme and what it might mean for the amount of interest that's charged or charges down the line. People are fearful they'll get into one of these schemes and then find that they're charged through the lots of money once the scheme is up and running, but this crisis has passed. There's no mention that I've seen of whether there'll be charges for repayment early. Fingers crossed there won't be, but we just don't know. So that is those are the rumours. A point, and that's the bounce back scheme. I'm not sure whether people are asking questions, and we'll cover them off at the end as well. But that's pretty much everything we know about the scheme. As we know more, we'll let you know. I just wanted to talk about cash flow because, in a way, I'm a little bit concerned. If someone comes to me and says, I'm looking to borrow money, the first thing I'll say to them is, right, then you need some cash flow forecasts. Yes, of course I would, because I'm a fee-grabbing accountant. No, because I think that it's really important before you commit to borrowing money that you've considered whether you're able to repay the money or not. So if you want to go away and prepare a simple cash flow forecast that gives you comfort that the risk of this causing you trouble in the future is low, then great, do it. If you want something that's more something you can depend upon, rely upon, and that you know has been thought through, then maybe you'd engage us to prepare a forecast. Just to remind you, this is not me looking for your fees. I think it's fantastic that you can access these funds without needing in-depth cash flow forecasts going out for 3 to 6 years. But it doesn't take away the need to think ahead and think, is this a sensible thing for me to do? I've got a business that's struggling. Is borrowing money the right way out of this hole? For some people, yes, it will be. For some people, it will cause significant distress in the future. But hey, that's okay because it's government backed. So if I'm unable to repay, the government can just pay it. And then I can close the business and start something new. Yeah, if you've got a company, maybe that's an option to you. If you're self-employed, maybe it's an option to you that the government pays your loan off if you can't manage to. However, that's just the money side of it. Insolvency is so far from fun. It's distressing, stressful. It can tear your business apart. It can tear your family apart. It can tear your life apart. It can leave you feeling dreadful. Granted, it can also leave you with an incredibly positive feeling afterwards once those stresses that you may have carried as a burden for a long, long time have passed. Maybe now's the time to think, do I really want to be borrowing more for this business if I'm struggling already? And have a very honest conversation with yourself about that before you do undertake to apply for this loan scheme. It might be that you're missing an opportunity. Hey, I'm not saying that you haven't thought through everything, but maybe we start with that SWOT analysis. Maybe you just list down the strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and threats. It's certainly something that we suggest to. Oh, hang on, I'm getting all confused because I'm trying to use a computer whilst talking to you. It's certainly something that we do with our clients if they are requesting a business plan. We say, actually, you write the business plan, go away and think about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats that face your business. Then we'll work together to prepare a cash flow forecast. Then apply for the money, because if the bank asks you difficult questions, you'll be able to answer them. But also that process helps you decide how much money you want to borrow, how much money you're happy to owe to somebody else. You really should be considering these before taking out one of these loans, in my opinion. And if you'd like support with talking through that, even if you do not want us to prepare a big forecast for you, then get in touch, please, because now's the time to make those decisions before entering into any kind of commitment. Also, although it's government backed, just watch out for those potential onerous terms that the banks may be able to sneak into these agreements. Consider how taking this loan may affect your other credit facilities and your ability to borrow money. I'm not saying it will cause trouble. I'm saying you should consider it before you enter into something new. So there's something to do in the next 5 days before the loan scheme becomes available. 5 days, yeah, about 5 days before it becomes available on Monday next week. Moving on from cash flow and the bounce back loan, let's have a quick word on commercial rent payments. And thanks to a good friend Gareth Buckley of the Insolvency Company who pointed this one out to me and on social media as well. That it is possible to ask for a rent holiday, and in fact the government is now making it or is intending to include it in the, hang on, I'm going to start again, I'm going to start from the end. This is something that's been included in the emergency coronavirus bill, which is currently going through Parliament. And what this bill says, in this part of this bill, it says that if a business is unable to make a commercial rent payment in the next 3 months, they must not be kicked out because they have not made the payment. So it's something to bear in mind. Yes, it may be that we're talking about deferring a rent payment that still becomes due. So I'm not suggesting to you that you don't pay your rent for 3 months because the government have said that your landlord can't do nothing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you cannot be forced out. And so if you feel that you are receiving pressure to leave your premises because you can't pay the rent, then it might be worth having a word with me or potentially even with someone like Gareth, who I think knows this in a little bit more depth than me, to discuss what options are available to you there. The government doesn't want to see businesses kicked out. As I say it though, I'm also thinking, as I said at the beginning of this, I wonder whether businesses will want the same premises to come back to at the end of this. And that's worth including in your planning as well. What does my business need in the future? Is the premises that I have appropriate? We certainly love our office, but we've been discussing as a team how we all sit much closer together than it's likely we'll be allowed to sit under the guidance that comes out. So how are we going to deal with that? Some people have said, well, actually, with children still at home, going into the office just isn't an option. Others have said, I work very well from home. We do also have a few breakout rooms. How are we going to use the space? Will we be using it differently? Almost certainly, yes, we will. Anyway, that's enough of me rambling on about rent. Let's look to your questions. Oh, anyway, that's what we've been discussing. Thank you very much for listening. We've been discussing the business impact of coronavirus. We then had a little look at the grants and how they're progressing and how we're pleased that money is getting to businesses as quickly as we think is possible. The bounce back loan scheme sounds like something that will allow a lot more businesses to access funding, especially those that may feel they've been let down by these schemes that are currently in place. Other announcements, they've been minimal, but that rent one that I've just mentioned, and then we'll move into questions and answers. We haven't had any. We haven't had any questions. Now's the time. If you've got questions, I guess that means we've covered everything, or people realise that we've only got a little bit more knowledge than they do about this because it's all being publicised so well online. This is good. No new questions. Just going to check in with the team, make sure that nothing has gone wrong along the way. Okay, so if you have a question afterwards, our intention is to publish this onto YouTube so that the recording is available to people who've missed it. There'll also be a Q&A opportunity within that YouTube video as well. So if you have a question after the fact, get in touch with your normal member of the team. That's absolutely fine. Ask it online if you'd like to do it publicly. That's absolutely fine as well. Thank you to everyone who watched, and we'll come back to you once there've been more updates. Into May, we'll do these as the updates warrant a presentation. It seems silly to do a weekly presentation and ask you to come and listen in if we haven't got anything to announce. So they'll probably be less frequent. We've also been asked by a couple to give you a bit more notice of them as well. So we intend to give you more notice of less frequent updates, but still provide you with this portal to ask questions as well. So thanks for listening, and that's us. Bye.